And what sets you apart from those who play victim in these type of scenarios is if you don't let the mistakes that you made to hurt this person define you, but instead you let these mistakes guide you onto a better path. Hello, and welcome to Learn to Love You, a channel and a community where I want to help you to learn to love yourself, because learning how to do so has changed my life. Hello everybody, welcome to Learn to Love You. If this is your first time here, welcome to Learn to Love You. And if you're returning, welcome back, it's great to see you again. Today's episode is going to be all about how to love ourselves even when we fail, even if we mess up or do the wrong thing. Because I know that so many people struggle to love themselves and accept themselves when they do something wrong or make a mistake or if they fail in some type of way. So I definitely needed to make a video on this topic. But before we get started, make sure to check out the Learn to Love You podcast and check out the blog on Medium. They will both be linked in the description of this video. But without further ado, let's get into it. All of us at one point or another have done things that we just haven't been so proud of. Maybe you hurt another person, or you got fired from your job, or you didn't do the best that you could on a very important exam. Maybe you miscalculated something important, or you forgot a special event, or you let an accident happen. Whenever we make some form of mistake in life, as humans it's natural for us to feel a sense of guilt, remorse, shame, or even embarrassment. However, sometimes these emotions can feel very strong and overwhelming, and this can cause a lot of people to spiral into self-loathing and to be ashamed of themselves, and can ultimately lead into self-hate. As children growing up, we were taught that every mistake that we made was punishable, or it said something about our worth. We were yelled at by our parents when we misbehaved. We were told by our teachers that our bad grades meant that we were dumb. We were laughed at in class if we got an answer wrong by our peers. We were forced into these boxes of perfection at a very young age and made to believe that if we were to mess up or we were to make a mistake, then that would say something about our worth or our potential. And while many of the adults around us were just trying to teach us right from wrong and make us into respectable citizens and scholars at the end of the day, most of us were never taught that making mistakes is actually very healthy. So many of us carry around the subconscious idea that we have to be perfect, and if we were to make a mistake or we were to do the wrong thing, then we would be a failure or a bad person. This causes a lot of people to be very afraid of making mistakes and to be very hard on themselves when they do. The reality is that mistakes and faults are just part of the human condition, and no matter how much you learn in life or how much you master in life, you are always bound to still make mistakes. And since most of us don't have a healthy mindset around making mistakes, this always causes us to jump to the worst conclusions about ourselves when we make mistakes or when we mess up. But what if I were to tell you that making mistakes is actually very healthy and it can help you to cultivate more love for yourself? Making mistakes can either make or break your life, and this is not dependent on the mistake itself. It's dependent on how you view the concept of making mistakes altogether. So let's talk some more about it. So you might have thought that you finished school years ago, when you crossed that stage and you got that piece of paper from said institution saying that your time at that institution had been completed. But what if I were to drop a bomb on you right now? Are you ready for it? The reality is, you're still in school. In fact, you never finished. Well, that's preposterous. Are you saying that that degree that I got, that I busted my butt for, doesn't count for anything? Now settle down there. I'm not talking about your credentials from your educational institution here. No, I'm talking about life itself. Life itself is school, and as long as you're alive, you're always going to be a student. In this human lifetime, we are here to constantly learn, grow, evolve, and repeat. When you started kindergarten, you didn't know as much as you did when you graduated from high school, or as much as you do now if you're still in high school and still a student. In order to get to the point where you are now, you had to learn things, test things, experiment things, and ultimately those things all helped you to expand your knowledge. But most of the things that you learned in school, actually, I'm going to say most, because I really still don't know the purpose of learning the Pythagorean theorem to this day. But anyways, most of the things that you learn in school were tools to help you expand your knowledge and to learn and grow into that scholar who got their diploma. Believe it or not, the mistakes that we make are also helpful tools that will instead help us to grow and expand on our journeys as human beings. And all of us are on our own unique journey, and this requires us making our own set of given mistakes in this lifetime so we can evolve into our higher selves. We are always in the process of becoming. The person that you were 5 years ago had to make mistakes mistakes in order to get to where you are today. But you wouldn't be who you are today without making the mistakes that you made before. And those mistakes are just tools. They're tools in our journeys of becoming. The problem is, so many of us don't see making mistakes in this way. And this always ends up inducing suffering in people's lives in one of two ways. Either people end up living their entire lives in fear, or they end up letting their mistakes define who they are. Let's talk about both. When we are afraid of making mistakes, this puts so many limitations on our lives. People who are afraid of making mistakes on average take less risks than other people, they engage in less new experiences, and they tend to only stick to people and things that are familiar and safe to them, even if they're not very good for them. And these individuals can be very close-minded, and in reality, they're only operating from a place of fear. They're afraid of expanding their minds and perspectives because this would challenge their familiar belief systems and end up taking them out of their comfort zones. And this causes a lot of people who live this way to feel very neurotic and feel this sense of anxiety in their everyday lives because they're so afraid of the inevitable. And the inevitable is making mistakes. Mistakes are an unavoidable part of life, so the more that you try to ensure that you don't make any mistakes in life, you're just going to be fighting a losing battle. And I understand that certain mistakes definitely do have greater consequences than other mistakes, but I want you to realize that everything that is worth pursuing in life involves risk, and with risk is the inevitability that you might make mistakes along the way. So restricting parts of your life to ensure that you don't make any mistakes is like living half of a life. You're not allowing your life to develop to its fullest potential. A full life requires making lots and lots of mistakes and being able to learn from each and every one of them. Many people sabotage themselves and hold themselves back from living the life of their dreams because they're so afraid of making mistakes. But how do you think that those people that you look up to and the people who are living their dream lives right now got to where they are? The people who have achieved the greatest feats in life have made several mistakes along their journeys. But if they let the fear of making mistakes stop them from achieving those goals, then they wouldn't be where they are today, let alone even tried in the first place. Learning to accept and embrace that mistakes are an unavoidable part of life can help you to change your perspective on them. And personally, I believe that mistakes are meant to be made, and they exist for a reason. I feel like the universe allows free will and allows us to make mistakes so we can learn, grow, and evolve as a species. Without mistakes, there would be no growth, and without growth, there would be no evolution. The more that we resist what is meant to be, which is making mistakes, the more that we lose our peace of mind and we start to feel anxious because we're fighting against the inevitable and we're not leaving room for ourselves to grow. Part of having a better relationship with yourself is unlearning the fear around making mistakes so you can be brave enough to allow yourself to make them so you can grow and evolve. And I want you to know that it would be a very unloving thing to restrict yourself from growth. So now let's look at the second flawed perception that people have around making mistakes. My mistakes define who I am. Now this one always leads to suffering because this causes everyone to spiral into self-loathing and self-deprecation. One of the greatest ways that we suffer in life is through personalization. Say one day you were shopping at a grocery store and you accidentally bumped into someone. You apologized to them, but they turned around and they told you that you were a stupid jerk. Your ego might personalize this comment and cause you to react in a negative and hostile way towards this person, rather than in a neutral way about the situation. Because your true self knows that you are not a stupid jerk, and deep down inside you probably know that you are not a stupid jerk as well. It's just your ego mind telling you, oh, this person called you a stupid jerk. That means that you are a stupid jerk, and you should feel like a stupid jerk, and that's why we should get defensive about it. But if you knew deep down inside that you were not a stupid jerk, you would not feel offended or attacked by this random stranger's comment. And this is not excusing their behavior. They shouldn't have called you a stupid jerk. But maybe they were just having a bad day. And if anything, this attack that they made towards you is very impersonal. But this can also be applied to the mistakes that we make. Sure, we are the ones who make our own mistakes, but the ego likes to tell us that there's something wrong with us if we do. It likes to attach labels to those mistakes. If we fail a test, the ego likes to tell us that we are stupid. If we drop a cake at our friend's birthday party, the ego likes to tell us that we're a total klutz. If we hurt someone that we care about, the ego likes to tell us that we're an awful person. Do you see where I'm going with this? The reality is, you are not stupid, you are not a klutz, and you are not an awful person. You are a human being. And sometimes human beings just don't do things perfectly. The labels that we put on ourselves after making mistakes only lead to us personalizing those mistakes and making those things say something about our character. And this, in most cases, always ends up turning into a victim mindset. If we believe that our mistakes say something about how adequate or how valuable we are, then we're attaching those things to our worth. We're letting those mistakes define how worthy or how valuable we are. We become a victim to our mistakes when we allow our mistakes to tell us who we are and what we're capable or incapable of. And this restricts us from seeing our mistakes as tools for our growth. If we give our mistakes that much power over our lives, then we're never going to be able to extract the vital meanings from them and apply the messages into our lives. And in turn, we're just going to be doomed to repeat those mistakes. But once you stop seeing yourself as defined by your mistakes and realize that you're actually the learner, you'll be more okay with making mistakes in life. And this is because you'll stop attaching your mistakes to your sense of self-worth, and you'll stop personalizing them. And this is where the learning process can begin to take place. Okay, well that's great, but what if I intentionally harmed someone? How could I possibly love myself in that situation? Now, this is something that I really want to touch on because it's a very valid question. Many of us struggle to love ourselves when we hurt the people around us. And when we do, we can feel an overwhelming sense of guilt, shame, and self-hatred. And these feelings are totally valid. And if you experience any of these feelings, congratulations, you're not a psychopath and you have empathy. But for the empaths out there, including myself, sometimes those emotions can feel very extremely strong and overwhelming, and they can swallow us whole. In my senior year of high school, I was friends with this one girl, and at a period in time we started having drama with each other. And I was hurt by the drama that was going on one day. And what did I decide to do? I went out of my way to tell her things that were not very nice. I went out of my way to tear her apart with my words, and I felt awful about it. I felt so guilty about it that I literally felt sick, and rightfully so. I mean, my behavior was not appropriate or acceptable in any way, shape, or form, but I was not able to cope with those emotions in a very healthy way. I literally let those feelings of guilt and remorse consume me, and I started tearing myself apart because I said those things to her. In my mind, I told myself that I was an awful person and that I should be punished and that I shouldn't be walking on the face of the earth. Okay, it didn't get that deep, but all in all, I really did feel bad about it. And I saw myself as a terrible person. But now looking back, I realized that I wasn't a bad person, and I'm still not a bad person. I was just a hurting person, and I was just acting out of a place of pain. And no, just because I was hurt does not excuse my behavior, and it doesn't excuse anyone else's behavior when they mistreat other people because they're hurt. But I see now that I said all those things to her because in my 18-year-old mind, I thought that that was the only way to relieve myself of the pain that I was in, was to inflict it onto another person. And now I see that my behavior was unacceptable, and by feeling those feelings of guilt and remorse, I had to learn the lesson from that mistake the hard way. However, beating yourself up for making mistakes will only cause you to resent yourself. And if you resent yourself, you can never love yourself. And hurting people absolutely sucks. I know that all of us with empathy really try our best not to do this. And the thing is, we hate doing this when it happens. But the reality is that hurting other people is an inevitable part of the human condition. Humans hurt other humans, even if it's unintentional. And this is just a part of life and just the condition that we're all in. And I know that I've hurt several people throughout my lifetime, but the more that I hold those things against myself, I can never forgive myself, and in turn, I can never love myself. And most people believe that they can't love themselves unless they do no wrong, or they never hurt anyone, or they're always a saint. But the reality is that none of us are like this, and we've all hurt different people at different points in our lives. However, if you were able to learn from hurting this person and decided to make a conscious choice to be better than you were, then that's all that matters. And this is the thing that sets you apart from the quote-unquote bad people. And what sets you apart from those who play victim in these type of scenarios is if you don't let the mistakes that you made to hurt this person define you, but instead you let these mistakes guide you onto a better path. A good and healthy relationship with anyone requires forgiveness, and this also applies to the relationship that we have with ourselves. We can't properly love ourselves if we can't forgive ourselves. Now I'm going to make an entirely other video on self-forgiveness another time and go deeper into that topic, but anyway, the pain that we cause other people in most cases comes from a place of ignorance, And if you knew everything that you know now, it would be hard to hurt that person in the same way as you once did. But we are taught that in order to be good people, we have to tear ourselves apart if we hurt somebody else. But in my mind, what makes a good person is someone who strives to be better than they were yesterday, who strives to make a difference, who doesn't sit there and be like, I hurt this person, my mistakes define me, there's nothing I can do about the situation now. Well, all you can do is what you can do now. See how you can improve now. That's what makes a good person, is someone who's taking the effort to be better than they were yesterday. There's no reason to beat yourself up. To wrap things up, I want to discuss how you can still manage to love yourself even when you do mess up. Now first, I want you to understand something about mistakes. They themselves are just a product of ignorance. We can't possibly make mistakes if we know every ounce of knowledge about how our actions would affect another person, or if we knew the outcome of our actions ahead of time. Just like no one would willingly give money to a scammer. I mean, hey, okay, this happened to me several times before, but the thing is, I didn't know that they were scammers. I was ignorant to the fact that they were scammers, and I give them money anyways. But let me not Look, no one with clear knowledge that they were being scammed by a scammer would willingly give money to that scammer. You see what I'm trying to say? And this is why it's important to be gentle with yourself, because you did not know better at the time when the mistake occurred. But now you know better. And it was okay for you not to know in the moment. Well, this means that I'm just not smart enough. Because if I was smart enough, then I wouldn't have made those mistakes in the first place. If only I was smart enough. And there it goes. There it goes. Your ego mind trying to personalize your mistakes again. You know, you really have to keep it on a leash sometimes. I want you to realize something. Wisdom does not come from not making mistakes. Wisdom actually comes from making lots of mistakes and applying the lessons that you learn from those mistakes into your life. As children, we didn't know much, but we had to learn different things and skills as we grew up. And most people wouldn't punish a child for not knowing a basic life skill, because they're only so young and they're still learning a lot of things. And this is how we ought to treat ourselves. Instead of punishing ourselves for making mistakes, we have to give ourselves the grace just as we would a child when they mess up. The mistakes that we make can also help us to better understand ourselves and to help us comprehend why we do the things that we do. And this will only show us the areas of life that we need to work on. And all of us have work to do in some way. And seeing mistakes in this way can help you to embrace yourself more when you make mistakes and hold space for yourself when you do. Lastly, I want to leave you with an insight that I had a few weeks ago about success, failures, and mistakes. Let me read it for you. All of us define success and failure based off of the results of our actions. But I realized that just because something hurts doesn't mean that you failed. And even when you get your desired outcome, it doesn't mean that you've succeeded. All of it is success because all of it are lessons. And as long as you learn from the lesson, that right there means that you've successfully completed the mission. Now thank you for your applause. I greatly appreciate it. In order to love ourselves, we have to allow ourselves to make mistakes and pick ourselves back up when we do. We have to lovingly accept ourselves when we make mistakes and remind ourselves that it's okay to make mistakes because we're only just learning. In fact, I believe that there can be no such thing as true self-love without making mistakes. Because making mistakes calls for us to carry ourselves through them, and in turn calls for us to be gentle with ourselves and more patient and understanding with ourselves. And this also helps us to develop self-trust because we can trust ourselves to make mistakes and to learn from them and to rise above them. Unconditional self-love means accepting yourself and loving yourself even when you do make mistakes and realizing that you're not perfect and that it's okay not to be, and giving yourself the grace to mess up sometimes, giving yourself the grace to fail sometimes, and still being able to pick yourself back up. But I want you to be gentle with yourself and realize that making mistakes does not have to define who you are. If anything, you have the power to transform your life through these mistakes. And loving yourself does not mean playing the victim and allowing your mistakes to define who you are. It's you being able to define what comes out of those mistakes. But self-love is a quest. It's a never-ending journey that we must go on in order to have happier and healthier lives. So allow me to take this journey with you and allow me to be your guide along the way. And we will learn to love ourselves together day by day, little by little, and that's right, piece by piece. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it today, please press the thumbs up button and the subscribe button down below. Also, make sure to check out the Learn to Love You podcast and the blog. They will be both linked in the description of this video. But I want you to be gentle with yourself and realize that mistakes are a natural part of life. You can't avoid them. You can't escape them. You just have to learn to love and embrace making them. Just like I want you to learn to love and embrace yourself. But just remember that I will always believe in you. But I just want you to believe in yourself. I'll see you next time.